On? There. I see some of you brought things. Can I take what you brought up with me? You're still working? Okay. And Karen brought. Yeah. Bird of Paradise. One of my friends had these for her wedding. Can you imagine? Whew. Oh, goody. Thank you. All right, I brought some unusual things from my garden too, but we'll get to that in a minute. First, maybe we'll put these in some water so you can look at them and think about them. All right. Welcome. I understand that you have been studying abiding with God and the challenges that can be. When life is going well, sometimes we say life is all roses. Life is rosy, right? So we're going to start with an arrangement of roses. So I got these from the market. You'll recognize how they were wrapped. The first thing you want to do when you get them is clear off any leaves that might not look so great or might be in the water, because the leaves carry bacteria, and that's what causes the water to stink after a while. We had, at the Atherton Garden Guild this week, we had a man talk to us about bugs, and it was kind of disturbing because bugs are everywhere. There are more bugs than people, and the bugs even get in our food. Did you know that they have rules for how many bugs per pound you can have in your food? I mean, it's terrifying. But they apparently provide more protein than animals. So I guess we should be eating bugs. Not my favorite. So, yeah, nice one. That's why many bouquets that you get from the market, when you think you're going to get 24, you actually get 25, because these things happen. All right. So I'm just going to use the roses. I'm not going to just put them like this. You know, the arrangements, the bouquets that you get from the grocery store, they look great from the top. They don't look so great from the bottom. So we're going to start, and we're going to do a hand-tied bouquet. That's where you take the flower and you add one at an angle, and then you twist it and add another one. And as you go around, where you're holding is where the lip of the container is going to be. That's why you don't want any leaves in that. And as you add it, you can have them at the same height, or you can vary it depending on what you want. This is also the way that you do, I do wedding bouquets. And they come out with the stems kind of splayed like this. And if you need to, you can cut it off and have it stand up by itself. We're going to tie it off with a little wire. And the hand-tied bouquet takes some practice to do. But you can easily do it in a clear glass vase because there's no mess, and it holds it together. And then we'll cut these off at about the same height. And then they could stand up if you wanted them to, if they wanted to cooperate, which they don't seem to want to do. Well, we'll just put it in the vase instead. And then you can adjust it. We might want to make it a little bit shorter. So this is what, your husband will bring you for Valentine's Day or your birthday or, it's just lovely and simple and beautiful, the way we think life should be, right? All rosy. But sometimes God gives us ordinary. This is an ordinary grocery store bouquet. It looks nice from the top. They generally do a nice job of arranging the colors on a theme. This one seems to be a peach theme. We're kind of on an orange theme today. Everybody is. But these bouquets don't look so great once you peel them back. And if you get them home and you just plop them in, a vase, it's not so good, right? Ordinary is not so fun. But that's what we get most of the time, right? Our daily routine is routine. So let's look at this. Okay, we've got some yicky stuff here that we want to take off. This one, they were generous with the flowers. A lot of times they give you they give you some foliage, but this one they didn't. Good thing I brought some. For chrysanthemums, you want to take off all the leaves because they get ugly quickly. And there's always in the middle a little stub where they pruned the first bloom away so that it would create some new ones. And this one is not going to do so well, so we'll take it off. Okay, so we have mums, we have a carnation, we have a rose. And do you find it easy when life is routine? Do you like routine? Sometimes I do. I made the mistake this week, though, of asking the Lord to show me that He was listening to me, because I've been struggling the last few years. 15 years ago, I had a catastrophic back injury, and that wasn't so fun. I had nerve damage down the left side of my body, from the middle of my back to the middle of my shin, and that was fine because there was no feeling, so there was no pain. So I was functioning from muscle memory, and that was great. But then in the last couple years, during COVID, when I was more sedentary, that's not so good. The nerves decided that they were going to wake up, but they were not consistent. So my brain said, this is not happening. We are not trusting the left side anymore. So ordinary muscle memory didn't work anymore. Now I've been in physical therapy for over a year to try to retrain my brain to truss the left side and to strengthen the muscles around the nerves where it's misbehaving so that I don't fall. But that doesn't always work. So that's not so fun. All right, here's a trick. This carnation looks a little sad because it's still a little closed. So you can take it and spin it, and it tends to open up a little. You can also make it open. You don't have to be as kind to flowers as you think you. They are more resilient than you think. Most of these flowers have traveled for 2 to 3 days, coming from, some of them from South America. God created them with the ability to form a scab on the end of their stem to keep the moisture in the stem while it travels. So the first thing you need to do after you get your flowers home and decide you're not just going to plop them in a vase, is you want to cut them underwater with the stem in the water and cut it at an angle, because that gives the most stem space for the flower to drink. And you want the water to be body temperature, warmer than you think you might want. Because, when you've been working out and you're thirsty, when you drink cold water, you can feel your throat constrict, right? Well, that's what happens to the flowers, too. If you put cold water, they'll constrict. And you want them to drink the most water they can. So warm water makes it open up. And when you're thirsty after you've exercised, you want body temperature water so that it will go down easily and hydrate you. So flowers aren't that different from us. So we have these, we have a few cast-offs that we'll use another time. And we have a collection of things here. We can do a hand-tied, or we can do, something different. What do you think? Shall we hand-tie it again? And then I'll show you something else. Okay, so I generally start with, these are what in the flower world we call majors. They're the significant flowers that everybody knows, that have the biggest head, and they cost the most money. Mums tend to be filler because they have multi-stems. They are relatively inexpensive, particularly this time of year. And then these we call filler. They're just additional variety to add to the mix. We also have foliage. And foliage is one of those things that we often don't think about in flower arranging. When you get flowers from the grocery store, you just think, oh, they thought of everything, right? But they didn't. Because foliage can extend the size and interest of your arrangement by adding another dimension of texture or color. This is myrtle. It has kind of a spicy fragrance to it too, which is kind of fun. So let's start with the majors, and we will rotate. And we're going to make this a little more dimensional. Okay. And then we'll put some foliage in. If you have questions, don't be shy about calling them out. I'm happy to answer. Okay, those are a little wingy. So, when I was complaining to God about my limitations from my back injury, this week, I thought, in preparation for this, I'd really like to have something exciting to share with the women. Could you really show me that I am abiding with you, that you are abiding with me? And that was a mistake on my part, because God has a way with me of yelling. When right before I broke my back, I was considering going back to school and getting a master's. And I was struggling with, should I do that? That would mean leaving my role as area advisor for Bible Study Fellowship. It would mean changing a lot of things. And, God in his permissive will wasn't saying much. And I thought, okay, I can go ahead. But apparently I wasn't listening very well, because when it was time to make a decision, he made it for me, and that's when I broke my back. And then 2 surgeries and lots of rehabilitation later, I thought, I'm feeling pretty good again. I think I'll go back and try to get this master's now. And then, same time of year, same MO, I broke my ankle. And it was like, really? Do you have to break me? But apparently, I don't listen very well. So this week, when I was, wanting a sign from the Lord, he gave me one. I was coming back from my daughter's on Monday night, and I felt my car kind of being a little bit funny, and I slowed down, moved to another lane, and things changed. They calmed down, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm all right. And then it felt like, maybe the tire's flat. So I pulled over, and as I pulled over and stopped, I saw the tire going down the freeway. And I thought, oh, well, I guess I'm not going anywhere now. So I called my husband, and then I called AAA, and I thought, it took me a while to figure out where I was on 280, because it was in the section of 280 that is after 92 and before Edgewood Road. It's kind of empty. And the AAA wanted me to tell them where I was. And I couldn't figure out where I was. I mean, I knew where I was, but I couldn't figure out how to tell them. So, yeah, it was challenging. And as I thought about it, I thought about, wow, this could have happened in so many bad ways, because I had picked up my granddaughter from school that day, and I had been running a little bit late. So I was going, 280, you go 80, right? No. It could have happened when I was going 80. It could have happened when I was with my granddaughter. It could have happened when I was in the tunnel on 92. It could have happened when I was surrounded by other cars. There were so many ways it could have been terrible. But the Lord protected me. And when I got home, and then I thought, I'd need to be towed because clearly there was no tire I could drive on. And I was afraid to get out of the car and look to see what was left. It was just the rim. Gratefully, I didn't realize this, but gratefully I had a full spare. A full spare. Not a patch kit, not a reinflator, because those wouldn't have worked. There was nothing left. So I was left there thinking, thank you, Lord. Oh, thank you, Lord. Oh, thank you, Lord. And my son-in-law, who was closer geographically, was out of town. My daughter, I had just left her, and my daughter's here, by the way. That's Louise. She just put the kids to bed, so she couldn't come help me much. My husband had traveled most of his life, most of his career internationally, and was gone 60% of the time when the kids were growing up. So gratefully, he was in town. So there were so many blessings, so many ways it could have gone terribly. So the Lord answered my prayer loudly again and said, I'm listening. Are you listening? Yeah. So we kind of made ordinary not look so ordinary. Maybe we'll cut it off short. So does God talk to you quietly, or is he loud like he is with me? Nope, we need it a little shorter. There we go. Yeah. All right. So we have life is rosy, life is ordinary. And then I asked you to bring challenging things, and a few people did. But I picked from my garden really lovely things. Ha ha ha. So we have, that's a rosy flower. This is a peony. Oof, that is special. My daughter's favorite. That one traveled from South America because they are not local this time of year. All right. So my garden has interesting things in it, right? Do you know what this is? It's an agapanthus that's gone to seed. It was hiding amongst the rose bushes. We're going to take the seeds off. My mother was also a gardener and an entertainer and liked flowers. That's where I got interested. And she, one Christmas, took the agapanthus from her garden and sprayed them gold. Kind of is interesting, unusual. If you don't have anything else, it might be fun. So don't be afraid when you have things in your yard to make them work for you, like, taking off the leaves, taking off these seed pods, trimming off anything that's dead. Okay, we've got 3 of those. I also brought, these are fun, huh? Thistles. We have one that broke off. Kind of creepy things, because sometimes life is not roses, it's not ordinary, and it's kind of challenging, kind of like these things. This one doesn't look so good. So we have little bits. These were the only things that were remotely colored in my yard, and they are so tiny. This is lavender. I had one geranium, one. And then we have all kinds of, everybody knows this one, right? It's live oak, kind of pokey, kind of like holly. Eesh. Challenging. This is a South American, or no, Australian, I think. We have some ferns. Those are kind of predictable. Some rosemary that had some flowers, kind of as big as the lavender. A couple of those, but they're kind of wild. So can we make something beautiful out of all this mess? It'll be a challenge, right? These are the unusual flowers of a flax that's growing from my yard. Challenging. We had some seed pots at Little Color. These are billy balls. You have those on your tables. They dry nicely. All right, so what are we going to do with all this mess? God called everything he created good, even the weeds. Can we make something good? We have some yellow. Foliage is my friend. I like foliage. We always think of foliage as green, but it's not always green. This one's yellow. This one kind of has a blue cast. This one's kind of yellow-green. The camellia that I used earlier is really dark green. That's kind of what we think of when we think of foliage. But you can make an arrangement out of just foliage, too. Just like God can do surprising things out of surprising experiences. All right. Oh, and I brought succulent, a little bit of mums, but they only had short stems in my yard. All right, so what do we think? We have these beautiful. This kind of goes with this, doesn't it? These unusual things kind of play nicely together. Maybe the bird of paradise wants to sing louder. I often talk to the flowers, and one of my friends, when I was doing flowers at Bouquets to Art with her, she laughed at me because I was looking at it and kind of doing this. She says, "You conduct your flowers." I kind of do. All right. This is kind of linear. Maybe, we'll save that one. Some of these are playing more nicely together than others. Let's see. Oh, we have another one of these. I forgot. Maybe we need it. Do you guys play with flowers? Do you have gardens that you like to play in? I know my friends who came here. So my daughter's here, my daughter-in-law's here. The other grandmother, my daughter-in-law's mother, is here. And 2 friends from my life group are here. And the 2 friends from my life group I also knew years ago when we were in Bible study fellowship together. So, it's nice to have long-term friends. All right. What do we think? What else do we want? Maybe a little pittosporum around here. Maybe we'll use the orange to play with the bird of paradise. Maybe a little. Okay. I think. Oh, we did have another one of those. Maybe we'll move that. Do you have questions? Thoughts? When I was growing up, how did I learn all this? So, so my mom and my grandmother liked to entertain, and so my grandfather and my father liked to garden. So there were always flowers in the house, and there was always an occasion. So I think we'll let this play. My dad was a camellia gardener, and so was my grandfather. And they liked to go to camellia shows. And camellia shows had I shouldn't have cut that so low, always had a junior segment to it, where the kids could hang out. And so in Ulster Mary, you want to take off all those leaves, just like in the mums, because they poop out. So we were invited as young kids to arrange flowers with camellias. Camellias are hard. They have very small stems, and they tend to drop. You get them in a bouquet, and they're better floating. But, nobody told us children that. So that was what we were exposed to as novice arrangers. And so that's where I got started. And then when I moved to Seattle, a friend from church told me about a class she was taking for flower arranging, and I thought, I want to do that. So I had young children at the time, and 3 of my friends were willing to watch my kids while I did the flower class, and that allowed me, when we moved to California, to have the credentials I needed to work at Filoli. My mother-in-law brought me to Filoli the first Christmas I was here. I was not happy about being here. We had been living in Seattle for 10 years, and my small group there laughed at me when I told them I didn't want to come back to California, because they said, "We remember when you moved here, you didn't want to be here. And now look, you don't want to leave. Isn't God faithful?" And I thought, oh, you're right. Shoot. So So then at Filoli, I went with my mother-in-law the first Christmas we were here, and I listened to the pitch for volunteers, and there was a group that were flower arrangers, and I thought, ooh, I'd like to do that. So I went up to the ladies that presented afterwards and said, you know, I'd be interested. And they said, oh, well, we don't often have openings. People don't leave the committee. And I said, oh. And they said, but do you have any experience? And I said, yes, I do. I just finished a class. And they said, oh, okay. And then a couple weeks later, they called me and invited me to be part of the group. And I never looked back. I was there until COVID. And it was very fun. The first, it was obvious the first couple of times that I was by far the youngest volunteer, because most were retired arrangers from San Francisco. They'd been in the trades for a long time, and they had just retired and wanted someplace to spend their time. And Filoli, back in the day, not now, but back in the day, was a great place to volunteer. And I learned so much from just watching. Since I was the youngest, I was willing to schlep buckets and, help the older ladies with whatever they needed, and learned a lot from them in the process. So that's how I got started. And each time I work with somebody else, I learned something from them. My friend Mary Tan works with me now at the Fine Arts Museums, and she claims she doesn't have a lot of experience, but she is learning fast. She is a fast learner. So we have a lot of fun together. So I decided this one we would go on an orange and wild theme. And this one is going to be a little bit more controlled, a little more refined, a little bit more like roses. This one is what God did with me the other night with the tire. He made something memorable out of something that could have been really tragic. So that one's not. And I generally, I like to arrange in my hand, as you can tell. I think. So we want things that have line. We want things that have movement. We want different textures. We want something that will come over the edge. We don't want to see the edge of the vase because our eyes are lazy. They are looking for a horizontal, and they will just stick there and go back and forth and back and forth. And you might have all these interesting things, but if your eye gets stuck at the edge, you're done. So remember that. Your eye wants to be entertained, but not too entertained. It doesn't want to be so busy that you can't you can't see it anymore. So, do we have any other questions? Thoughts? There is one. Hi. No. No. Yeah. No. Yeah. So when the flowers are cut in the field, they're cut with the longest stem they can have. And the plant puts a scab to keep the water in. When you bring it home, you want to cut it off about 1.5 inches up so that you are getting rid of that scab and any dried part of the stem. And then you want to put it in water, warm water, and you want it to, if you're doing a lot of flowers, like when I'm doing a wedding, I'll buy the flowers like on Wednesday or Thursday so that they can drink for 24 hours before I start playing with them, because you want them to be fully hydrated. If the stems are really long, it has so much more space for the water to get up to the head. I know most of you have gotten roses for Valentine's Day or Mother's Day that have gone after, 24 hours. That's the scab, the air bubble, has moved up the stem and is at the head. And if you take that poor rose and lay it out in your sink and cut it again underwater and let it drink in your sink for, overnight, many times it will rehydrate, because the water comes into the stem and the flower through all parts of it. Hydrangeas, hydra, water. They are water lovers. And many times you get a hydrangea and it goes, "Ew." If you take it and dunk it upside down for a period of time, many times it will rehydrate. So the length of the stem, I think they last longer if the stems are short, because then the water is going straight to the head. I also think that if it has a short stem, the flower is going to have a shorter life, because it's going to, go from bud to bloom much faster, because it doesn't have to work so hard. And the flowers want to go to seed. That's their purpose. That's why you want to deadhead your flowers, to force the plant to put out another flower so that it will make seed. Right now our gardens are all going to sleep and they're all going to seed. That's why we had so many little things to take off. Okay, does that answer your question? Yeah. All right, so I think we'll call this done. I think
another question. Nina.
Okay. Yeah.
As you're arranging in your hand there, I notice that you're looking at different angles. And what are the angles that you're looking at, and what are you looking for in terms of symmetry or in your arrangement?
Yeah. Well, that's one of those things. So we want to find things that look alive, not like this. We want things. We think of the art elements. I call this ephemeral art. It has all the elements of art in it: color, line, rhythm, space, texture. And some of it is knowing how the plant grows. I think gardeners have an advantage in flower arranging, because they know how the plant grows and what happens when they prune it. You know, if it wilts right away, you know, probably not a good thing to use for flower arranging. But if it lasts like a camellia, you know, then that's a good thing to use. So I like to think about how the flower grows and let it sing the song that God made it to sing, and you know, make it play with things that might grow with it in the garden. You know, I don't often combine heavily water-using plants, flowers like hydrangeas with, you know, thistles and things, unless that's what the bride wants, and sometimes they do. I took a bride to the flower market. I was doing 2 weddings at the same time, and this one bride went with me, and the other was my cousin, and my cousin wanted, you know, fluffy, traditional, you know, peonies and roses and lovely things and pastels. And this other bride wanted bird of paradise, thistles. She picked all of these kinds of pokey, masculine things. And so it was like, okay, this is going to be a challenge for your wedding. But then I had to pick these fluffy things for my cousin at the same time we were shopping together. And so after she'd picked bird of paradise and thistles and, you know, other things, I started picking these kinds of things, and she said, oh, I like those. And I thought, thank God, because then it made these things softer for a wedding and allowed it to play. Art, you know, your eye. Some people don't have an eye, but you can still, you know, you can go from the guidance of the grocery store bouquet and go, oh, I like those colors together. Oh, I do. I really do. And then you can just add, you know, a little foliage around the edge, a little fern, a little camellia, and, you know, wow, you've made something fun. So that's what I'm looking at, you know, how the plant grows, how the flower grows. Also, you have to think about where you're going to have it, because you don't want something like this as your centerpiece for dinner at a round table, because you can't see over it. You know, you don't want people, you know, doing this to try to talk. You need it to be low or higher than the heads. And whenever you do an arrangement, even if it's going to be on a hall table that won't have the back seen, you must put a bustle on it. Because your eye will see that there's something flat on the back. If you just put this, your eye will know there's nothing behind it. You need, you know, something to support it visually, so that it's more interesting, because our eyes are easily fooled and lazy. So you need to have depth, even if it's going to be against a wall. Okay? Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
I noticed as you made this last bouquet that you almost started with the greenery that time.
Yes.
And foliage.
Yes.
And then added in.
Yes.
Would you recommend that in general, if you have a greenery heavy bouquet, always start
Yes.
with the greenery?
I prefer to start with foliage. That was kind of a thing that I learned at Filoli, because we were cutting from the garden. And during the year, you know, sometimes there weren't flowers, but there was always foliage. And the gardeners would cut foliage for us. And so we had an abundance of interesting foliage. I used to, well, I still do, arrange for our old church, St. Timothy's Episcopal. And the priest one time said, I challenge you for St. Patrick's Day to do something without flowers, all foliage. And I thought, I can do that. But the container I decided to use, I had to redo it 3 times because it was in a bowl that sat in a stand, and it was rounded on the bottom, and every time, I'd get it kind of ready and I'd move it, the whole thing would shift and dump out. So it was more challenging from a structural standpoint than a foliage standpoint. I have used just about everything I brought, but we'll make something out of the foliage. Surprise! Maybe this wants to go in.
Can I ask you one more question
Yeah.
about using large vases?
Yes.
When you're working with the hand bouquet and holding the bouquet,
Uh-huh.
if it gets to the point that you have, because you're trying to do something really large or exciting,
Yes.
you can't hold the whole thing.
Right.
Do you sort of work on the middle section with the main pieces and then add around the edges?
Yeah.
How would you do a big vase?
Yeah. For my daughter's wedding bouquet, she had specific things she wanted. And it was right after I broke my back. I was still on a walker for that. And the arrangement, she wanted it kind of cascading a bouquet. And so I made the center part and wrapped it, bind wire. And then I added to it and then wrapped it too. But for, a big freestanding arrangement, the trade is not liking Oasis, which is that floral foam, because it's primarily styrofoam. And so it doesn't decompose. So we're going back to the old ways of doing things with wire and cages. At Filoli, we had some copper wire, heavy gauge copper wire that we bent back and forth on itself, and it made this long thing that when it collapsed and got put into, the big urns that we used, it would hold the flowers. And then there was less stuff in the vase, the urns, so that there could be more water so that the plants would be happier. Yeah, chicken wire, we're going back to chicken wire. We'll make little, what do you call it? Kind of a ball of chicken wire and put it in the vases, but not clear vases. You don't want to see, nobody wants to see the mechanics, that's what we call it. Nobody wants to see the mechanics in a clear glass vase. So, you can either arrange it in, arrange it in your hand, or I set the foliage first. And then you get more mileage out of your flowers too. You don't have to use as many because you have more foliage. All right?
Did we have one more question? Yeah.
Another question?
Yeah, I think we do one more question.
First of all, thank you so much about showing us about the agapanthus, because I'm thrilled about that.
Yeah.
But also,
They
what
dry
about
too. They dry.
They do? How nice.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm
so-
so excited. Because my brother always calls them freeway plantings, but I like
Yes.
them. But what about the little glass beads or rocks to
Yeah,
use? Any
yeah,
comments
you
on
can.
that?
Yeah, they're all right, but they fill up the vase and take up space that it could be used for water. But if you're nervous about, having something to stick your materials into, to hold them in place if you're nervous, they work. Yeah. Yeah, my friends tease me because, when I'm playing with flowers, I just keep playing. And a lot of times when we're working together, friends will still be cogitating on how they're going to put the arrangement together, and I'm just working. So, yeah. Oftentimes, sorry, I have a tickle. Oftentimes, it's fun to group things together because that's how they grow in the garden. That's just too wingy. It kind of belongs over here. Oop. Whoo! Yeah, you see how your eye now goes, and you can. So, anyway, I think we're done. On things like this, if you don't want to use the whole piece, you can divide it out and end up with several parts that you can use instead of one big thing. Tricks. Make it work for you. All right? So I gave you some questions for discussion, things about whether your life is rosy or ordinary or challenging, and how you deal with that, how you respond to God, and how you find Him in the midst of those challenges. I'm hoping and praying that you don't have the hardness of hearing that I do, that makes God have to yell at you like He has to yell at me. But sometimes, the lessons we remember most are the ones that come from hard times. So we have to be grateful for everything and know that God is with us even when we're not abiding in Him. He's abiding with us. So thanks.